Okay, so I'm at the assembly stage now of my hand painted stairs. So we've got our oak tread and we've got our painted riser. So we've got to make sure that all the joints are nice and snug and everything's fitting correctly together before assembly. So just some information prior to assembly. Don't ever attempt to assemble, or I wouldn't ever attempt to assemble unless I had everything that I needed to have done prior to assembly. Because you're gluing and wedging, you've only one chance to get it right. So what's very important is that the stands it sits on must be perfectly parallel. So they can't be like so, they must be perfectly parallel. So to do that, to set up the stands, you might have to put wedges underneath them. I put up the two strings on top and I'll sight across the strings to make sure that they're in line. That's extremely important. So I'll put in the bottom tread there and I'll put in the bottom rise. Now prior to putting it together, make sure you've all your wedges out, make sure you've got clamps ready, make sure you've got blocks on the end of the clamps there to stop it marking the paint if it's a painted surface. So I have MDF stuck to the shoe on the far side there because that's the side that will be seen. I have all my wedges out, make sure I have all my glue. I have my screwdrivers, I have my screws for screwing in here when I'm screwing the back of it. I have sharp chisels for chiseling off the wedges. Wet cloths, got wet cloths just to rub off any surplus glue. And I've got my glue pots and I've got my glue bottle. I've got sandpaper. So anything I need prior to assembly, I have it ready. So that when I'm moving down along the stair that I can move in a timely fashion and that I have everything to hand. So I just set up a little block across there, have all my wedges. It's important that the wedges fit both the tread and the riser at the same time, that they're not two different lengths. So I have all that done. I've put in the first rise there and I've put in the first tread and rise and I've wedged back so far. So just my modus operandi when I'm doing this, I'll just show you what I do when I'm putting them together. It's important that we have the clamps set up. Now you'll notice this at the back here, I just put in a rise at the back here and I just put a light little bit of pressure on it. And what that does prior to starting is it allows the whole thing to square up and it keeps it in a parallel fashion so that I'm accurate from bottom right up to top. So once I have the first few threads in, I can take it out if I wish, but I just happen to leave it there. Those clamps are loose there. There's just enough to hold it so I can push in my threads. So when I come to the thread itself and the stair string, everybody's different with this, but just let the glue brush slip into that there by mistake now. So what I do with that, I just put the slightest smidgen of glue onto the thread where the thread goes here, just a small amount, and I do the very same thing with the rise, but I do it with a wedge. So I'm just going to leave the glue brush down there for a moment, and I'll just come back with a small wedge there, and I'll put a small smidgen of glue there, and I'll put a small amount of glue on this rise here as well. So that's that done. The next thing I do, get a glue bottle. Now I put the thread in first. So I put the thread in here. So that should slip in there. This clamp is loose. So we want the thread to go in nice and snugly first. Don't put any clamp or pressure on it. So we tap that in. So I'll always have an end grain block there, just tap home everything first. Just tap it in nice and gently. Okay, that's looking good. I can see the front of the nose in here and there. That'll do for now. The next thing I do is on the previous thread, I put glue onto the joint. I put glue onto the joint there. Then I come to my riser and I put glue onto the actual rebate there. Just there. That's all I do. Put that to one side. You'll see that a nice little system, nice tidy little system to go hand in hand with your procedure for assembly. So I'll get this guy in here now. Just a bit of gentle persuasion. So I again, I'll just use this block here. Okay, that's it. Now, I always put the clamp in the middle here on the top, give it a little tighten. I pull it back a tiny bit there, I'll explain why in a minute. And then I take the one on the bottom and I move it to the centre, right to the midpoint, and just get clamping pressure on the bottom here. Now I need a second clamp go on there, so I'm just going to steal this one for a moment because I haven't wedged this one yet. I clamp that there. Now it's normally it'd be nice to have a second person on this when you're doing it, but that's not always possible. So now, what I always do is I always wedge the riser first, which drives the string or drives the thread forward to close any little gap that might be there. So I glue up a couple of wedges, which I have here. So I'll go back to my glue brush for this. You'll notice I have a glue pot and I also have a glue bottle. So I use the bottle to do the rebates. It's easier and faster. So you glue 3 sides of a wedge. Now when you've everything ready, it makes life very, very easy. You're not pressured then to have glue drying and you have the joints right. You know, you have everything right prior to starting. That's really, really important that you do that. Now as I said, a wedge, I put the wedge in at the back of the riser here. So all 3 sides there glued. I make sure my joints are tight, make sure my clamps are tight, 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 tight. So now the string and the riser are pulled really tight together and the thread itself. So I can send that down. I can look underneath it if I wish to see if everything's alright. And that's all looking good. There's a slight opening in the riser, but of course the wedge will take account of that. I'll go to the side here where the camera is. So we're over here now, and same thing again. Just keep my hand on the riser or on the wedge. Oh, that's a Monday morning wedge. Throw that to one side. They're the things that can happen, so you always need to be ready to have plenty of wedges to hand. Very rare that one will split like that, but you've just seen it happen. So we go back to where we are here. Where are we? Yes, this one. Okay, so I've driven that forward. I'm just going to give a little peek in underneath here, just to make sure everything's hunky-dory. Yeah, so that's good. Now, I will always have sharp, I'll come back on camera there, I'll always have a sharp chisel. I can't drive in the second wedge until I get rid of this one. Now some people cut them, but I prefer to just use a sharp chisel. That's all I need to do. And I can reach over here and that's it. That's all I need to do. So again, I'm working with very sharp tools, of course. Go back again, glue up my 2 wedges that I require to do the thread, which is next. So wedge the thread. Now it's always handy if you have a second person here, just even gluing up the wedges, but I'm down a body today. So I'm on my shake smear. It's just a Mayfair job today, so me on my own. Anyway, so we get there. It's just, I have to be doubly sure that I have everything done prior to wedging. What am I doing there? I think we've done 4 sides there. Okay. So I'm back here now. That's wedging the tread home. Now, you probably noticed at this stage something I didn't mention, but it's obvious to the viewer that the stairs is upside down. So you need a level of competence and confidence when you're putting a stair together that everything on the right side is the way it should be, the joints are nice and snug, etc. I would have done that prior to assembly to make sure that everything has a little dry fit first on a couple of elements, just to make sure we're hunky-dory. There's not worse than a tight joint or something that won't go together and you're trying to drive too much force. So joint should always be glove-like, just putting a glove in the hand, nice and snug. So that's what I have there. I'm just going to give a little look in underneath. So I'm happy with that rise and that tread. Yeah, everything is good. So when you're doing this process, it's necessary to work at a consistent rate just to get it done in case anything untoward happens. So I don't want glue going off or whatever. So I'll move these clamps. These clamps will come back and just repeat the exercise. Remember, I have this thread glued now, just at the edge, but that'll dry forward, no bother. So I put in the thread, I put in the rise, I move my clamp to the centre there. The reason for moving it here is that I can get the angle on the chisel to break it or to chop it prior to putting in the wedge for the thread itself. So that's what I do. It's the same process throughout, right up to the back end until we fit the top newel post. There's a new base gone in here, and the rise here has been trimmed to the height of the floor. So that's floor level there, so we've trimmed it off. And the other wedges, I'll come back on them when I have everything assembled fully. I'll come back and take them out. I'll chop them later on and just tidy it all up. Also, there's a little glue wedge, glue block. I'll just get one out here. When a stair is glued properly, it shouldn't cause any problems, or there shouldn't be any creak or anything like that. But just to reinforce it, what we do is we put in glue blocks underneath between, it's a block that's glued here and here, and that'll sit in between the two of these, will sit in between the tread and the riser underneath. And that just gives it extra, or the riser and, yeah, the tread and the riser underneath. And that just gives it extra stability and strength, just prevents anything that might be creaking. One thing I didn't put on camera there, just while I'm doing it, I have the tread fixed to the riser. It's jointed there, of course. There's an actual tongue and groove there. But I have 3 screw holes here. Now some people nail them, that's fine. Some people pin them, that's fine also. But you normally need just a little bit of extra screws or pins there to pull the joint closed while the glue sets. I'll say somebody normally with a little nail gun, not the 18 gauge pin or the next size up, they'd nail them there, just put maybe 3 or 4 nails across it. I'm reluctant to do it in this stage here because sometimes with the yoke it's very hard, and the odd time a pin or a nail might come through on the far side, it might just ricochet and come out on the surface, so I'm reluctant to do that. I have all the risers pre-drilled prior to assembly as well, so that I don't have to be coming along to do it there as I'm doing the assembly. So that's as much as I can show you. I'll just continue on that path and complete the rest of that assembly as I've been doing there. The next rise goes in, the next tread goes in, the next rise goes in. I drive the wedges into the rise first to drive the tread forward. So I always wedge the rise first and then the tread next. So I'll follow myself up along there. Everything's going nice and smoothly for me there. I'll come back and clean off the wedges, and it'll take another maybe half an hour just to finish out this flight. So I have a second shorter flight as well to do with this. So in this case the stairs is hand painted, and just to show you there, I put a glue or a block on there against the shoe, the clamp, and the reason for that is I don't want the clamp marking this side of the string. Why? Because that's a finished painted surface and I don't want any marks on it. So that just works very handily there. I just stick them on and use double-sided tape. So I hope that might be a bit useful. It's just my methodology for assembling a stair.